Welcome back to the Grand Solar Minimum channel. Today is Monday, September 27th, 2021. Let's get right into it with some space weather news. First, I want to report on our solar wind speeds. They're coming in at 445.2 kilometers per second. Now that's went up about 43 kilometers per second just in the last half hour. Still, the likelihood of a G2 geomagnetic storm remains low. KP indices right now are at a 1, and the 24-hour max is at a 3. That's been really unchanged over the past several 24 hours or so. So unless we just have some drastic uptick in solar activity, solar wind speeds, I'm just not seeing it. We reported on the coronal hole that was Earth-facing that was supposed to reach Earth over the weekend. I predicted wind speeds of around 550 to 650, and really we didn't see wind speeds much more than 535 kilometers per second. So that particular solar wind stream came in kind of weak, and therefore we didn't see geomagnetic activity. And here we are today on the 27th, and we thought that we were going to have some action from these CMEs from the two M-class flares the other day. But that is not the case so far. 45% chance still of a G1 or a G2. But right now, we're still talking about a very low percentage of geomagnetic activity. Remember, folks, you have to have a KP of a 5 to be at a G1. So to be at a G2, we would have to jump up 5 KP indices. So that's a little unheard of that quick. And solar wind speeds, I would imagine, would be massive, like 750 kilometers per second, to see that kind of KP indices go up. Now, solar wind speeds have been moderate, between 440 and about 520 kilometers per second over the past several days. So one thing that has done to Earth's magnetosphere and the atmosphere is that it has lowered cosmic radiation dosage rates. Right now we're sitting at a 7.5%. Folks, we were at like 9% just a week ago. 9.5, 9.6. So when you see the increase of solar wind speeds, it tends to blow away the cosmic radiation that could be near Earth, but the solar winds themselves are able to push away cosmic radiation a little bit. Not a lot, but a little bit. And you can see here it's clear the last several days have had moderate solar wind speeds, so cosmic radiation dosage rates have dropped quite substantially. TCI is at a 5.48. That's dropped a little bit. That's the Thermosphere Climate Index, very tip top of the atmosphere. 5.48 is still considered very cold. 4 sunspots regions to talk about, with a smooth sunspot number of 67, AR 2871, 72, 77, and 78. And I will go to actually spaceweather.com. Or actually, no, let's go to the grandsolarminimum.com, our page, and let's talk about the sunspots real quick. So right now, 71 is a sunspot region that is still capable of producing. I think they're saying we could still see M-class flares from AR 2871. That was an older picture there, folks. Let's get the updated one here. Here we go. So there's 2871, 2872 on the departure here. These are the newer sunspots, but these are smaller. These two, this one really is carrying the load. You can see it quite well. These are very small sunspots here and here and here. So that's why we have a sunspot grouping of, or smooth number of 67 on 4 groups. Now beware, we will see more sunspot activity in the northeastern region and also down here as well. Now, I suspect that we are in a period of action, so it might be a few weeks, if maybe not at all, that we see another spotless day. But the one thing I want to add, no matter what's going on right now with this particular cycle, we've noticed that there might be a little bit heightened activity on the sunspots. But, folks, let's be honest and clear that these are smaller sunspots than what I believe may or may not have counted in previous solar cycles. They've changed things on how they count them. It's some research I got to do more on as far as, if they've changed the way they've calibrated sunspots and what qualifies for sunspots. But to be honest with you, with this cycle, it is starting to uptick. But still, the activity is still minimal. G1 and G2 storms were almost certain for the weekend. And that didn't happen. With the amount of activity that we saw from the sun with the M-class flares. Again, that just shows you there's no panic involved when we have an M-class flare or a C-class flare. The two that we saw a few days ago didn't even impact our magnetosphere at all. And they were in the southern region. In fact, when we had them, it was from 2871, and it was all the way over here. Now we have two new sunspots in that region, and they're very small, as you can see. But again, we're taking a look at sunspots number 67 with 4 active regions. The sun has been very, very active. Let's take a quick look at the SDO. And so as you can see, we got more bright active regions, but these are smaller sunspots, folks. 2871 still the most impressive out of all of them. And then let's take a look here at the eastern limb. We clearly see action here and here. We'll just have to wait for these to become more Earth-facing. Now, usually, SPACEWEATHER.com, when they're this far along, especially they're already piercing the eastern limb. So this could just be active bright spots. These don't necessarily mean they're actually sunspots. We'll just have to wait here for another day. We'll probably see another alert, or maybe Space Weather Tony Phillips will be circling these and showing interest. But this one right here, still capable of an M-class flare, but other than that, folks, it's going to be pretty much a nothing burger from this point on as far as that particular sunspot region. And even if it does blow out an M-class flare, we already saw the lack of impact from that particular solar flare, and now we will just thank the heavens that we didn't have to deal with something more dangerous. And that leads me into my update tonight for the volcano here, La Palma volcano, Cumbre Vieja. We have new lava flow tonight that we're looking at right here. And what's interesting about this is that we usually see the flow coming out on this side, right? And then today, we kind of had a lull in the action. Things kind of calmed down, quieted up a little bit. And this morning, I happened to just tune into this particular channel. It was daytime. Not much was happening. And then all of a sudden, like someone shot off the biggest mortar possible, you heard, boom. And all of a sudden, this plume of smoke comes shooting out of the volcano. So I actually witnessed the ash plume that was shot out this morning, or actually this afternoon for them at that point. When I checked in, it was probably around 1 or 2 o'clock local time for them. So I saw the moment the ash plume shot up, and then since then, now we're dealing with lava flow once again. The speed of this lava flow right now has some concern that this will reach the ocean, and we have to be on the lookout now for poisonous gases. As you can see, lava flow clearly here. It's from this vent back here and overflowing down the side. And if we have the ability to zoom this in, folks, at the bottom where my blue arrow is, if you continue to, during the daytime, this lava flow is now becoming closer and closer to structures and cities and towns and stuff like that. There's a communications tower that this lava flow actually is threatening as we speak. So if you remember, the flow was the same going down the mountain like this, but the last time we had a lava flow that kind of came from around. Now this side seems like it's walled up with all that lava rock that we saw flying through the air. And, this lava fountain here is not as let's say the ones that we saw at the beginning of this eruption were up here, where the tip of my arrow is. Like we saw the lava fountain this high. Although this is impressive lava flow. In fact, since the opening night of this eruption, this lava flow is probably one of the most heaviest of the eruptions since the eruption started. Now, like I said, there is some concern that this will reach the ocean a little quicker now if this continues to flow and erupt the way it is right now. Now, I do want to point out that I still have not seen any reports yet of any deaths from this volcano. So the evacuation plans were in place a long enough time. Folks were smart and got out of here. And right now we are not talking about any kind of death or injuries at this time. But we are over 400 plus structures that have been destroyed by lava. Now, that number is possible to get even higher now, since we are now concerned about lava flows possibly making it all the way out to the ocean. And we already know what that's going to happen. That's the scenario where it could produce the lava and the salt in the ocean can produce hydrochloric acid. It's very poisonous, very bad for the environment. People can get very sick and die from this. Same with plant vegetation, animals. So very, very concerning situation now, as we thought maybe this eruption was stable. And it appears that in some shape or form, tonight the lava flow appears to be a little bit more increased. And we are going to continue to watch this, because that's going to be the next concern, is the amount of lava that does make it to the ocean and what those effects are going to have across that region over there, folks. So we'll keep our eyes on that, but just some stunning pictures coming out of the volcano here in La Palma on the Canary Islands as we continue to watch this erupt. Now, it's very weak still, folks. VEI2 is what it came out as. So I don't expect, at this time, since really all the space weather stuff was kind of a dud, we didn't get any geomagnetic help from space weather that was approaching us. And I think maybe slightly that today's ash plume could have came just bizarrely at the same time that we got a break from solar activity, and then things are quiet on the volcano at the same time, and then we get this smoke plume and more ash fall. So we'll keep our eyes and see if solar winds continue to increase, if we see KP indices on the rise. But right now, I'd say the chances of the G2 storm happening are very, very slim. And at this point, even a G1 too. All right, let's move on here from the volcano. We got a couple of things to talk about tonight. Actually, just one more thing I wanted to mention before I let you guys into the weather. And that is dealing with, I've seen this story now on 2 different platforms. And Europe's crippling energy crisis presages trouble for the rest of the world. Listen to this. Natural gas prices have soared by almost 500% in 2021. With another winter just around the corner, gas is trading at near record values. While European countries attempt to outbid one another for supplies from major exporters, it's inevitable that utilities will turn back to coal to provide heat for its residents and power for its dying economy. But this will not be enough. The effects of Europe's catastrophic policy making are about to escalate to another level. What is this about? This is how you get in trouble when you take your country into green technologies. Natural gas, up until now, has been the most affordable way to heat your home and the most efficient. Also, if it matters to you, it cuts down on the carbon footprint, if that kind of thing matters to you. So out of all the forms of resources that we use for energy, the most efficient, the strongest, the best, most reliable is natural gas. And until now, it was affordable. So here we have these policymakers here in the United States trying to push this to be law here in the United States. We've already seen our president commit to a net zero by 2035 when it comes to vehicle sales, or you're going to get taxed like no other. So be ready for that. If you're going to keep your gasoline engine car, you will pay out the wazoo for registration. You will pay out the wazoo for insurance, and you will pay out the wazoo to buy gasoline for it. I mean, I imagine they're just going to make it to the point where you just, if you don't have an electric car, you ain't driving because you can't afford to put gasoline in it. But the policy making in the UK and Europe alike has gotten so bad. We've heard so many negative reports in Germany about their solar power and their wind operations and how it has driven the cost of energy overall through the roof. France and Germany actually are reporting record numbers on their census bureaus that they have found that kids that live with their parents after college, the average age right now of kids moving out are between the ages of 27 and 32. And there is an alarming amount of adults that are 35 and older who had to move in with their parents over the last 2 years because of escalating cost of living costs. So that could be on the way here if a certain administration gets his way with a certain bill, which is worth about $3.5 trillion, which, by the way, it's not even paid for. It's just more debt, and it's just putting the country through more strain. Now, I believe we need to upgrade the infrastructures. Mari and I live in upstate New York. We lived in Buffalo. We've seen how horrid the sewage system is there and how much backups happen on just unprecedented amounts of rain. They are not ready for this. Places here where we live, they're not ready for this either. They're starting to replace the drainage and sewer systems out here, but they've got a lot of work to do. So I support an infrastructure bill that will actually basically winterize, get these roads ready, get these potholes fixed, get these sewers redone, get these water lines redone. Let's get ready here in the Northeast because it's about to get really cold here the next several decades. I mean, can you imagine all the emergencies we're going to have with this old crappy infrastructure we have here in the Northeast? And I know if you live in Cleveland, Ohio, you'll agree with me as well. The roads and the potholes there are awful. The sewage systems there are terrible. Just about every big city probably needs an upgrade. In Buffalo, I believe there is like dates on the metal grates for the sewage systems, and I think some of them say 1880, 1890. Like, some of these sewer hole covers have not been upgraded in years, and along with the system. So when you get the amount of rain that we got in New York City just a few weeks ago, and you're flooding throughout New York City, well, it's not because of climate change. It's because you have an outdated infrastructure system. You have an outdated sewer system and a drainage system that cannot handle these once-in-a-lifetime or generation-type storms, which we know because of the grand solar minimum here in the next 30 years or so, we will experience many weather events that will reflect to once-in-a-lifetime type events. So these floods that we're having in... No, Veg. No, that's not it at all. I just saw your comment in the chat. And all I got to say is 47 yards, Veg. That's it. But back to what I'm trying to say here. We are looking at a major situation where we need to look to our brothers and sisters across the pond and pay attention to what the green policies have done to their economy. In fact, every time we look at Biden's plan, it's not even about saving the planet. It's not even about keeping mankind safe. It's about jobs and the economy. They mention the environment last. The first three things they talk about is jobs, economy, equality for wealth. It's just a major wealth distribution. And the people that are invested in, like Incognito Meat or what's the Impossible Burger? That's the Al Gore company. So all these really, really rich people have their hands in the cookie jar, and then they're friends with the people that make laws. So guess what? Those people that have their hands in the cookie jar benefit the most. And they get those people that benefit the most also start spreading out donations to campaigns and donations to other things that are interest to politicians. And you know how it works, right? I give you money, you give me money. That's basically what this is. And the federal government's been doing it in the forms of grants for years, talking about man-made climate change. They've given out millions of dollars of grants to study this. But the minute you want to try to study cosmic radiation and the cooling effect it has, well, you get the stink eye. So very interesting that Europe is switching back to coal this winter, because they know, and what they've seen so far in the southern hemisphere, what the forecasts are showing us now, already predictions of weak polar vortexes here in this winter. We know we're going to be in another La Niña, and I'll show you that in a minute. There's no doubt about it in my mind that we are definitely, without argument, La Niña definitely happened this fall and winter. So why is Europe switching back to coal? Don't they care about climate change? Don't they care about saving the planet? They know that the green technology is a bunch of hooey, and it's putting their people into poverty. When you have 34-year-olds and up moving back in with their parents because they can't afford to pay their own bills, and it's just cheaper for families to go out and get bigger houses and just live together. That's a common thing now. And starting to see that here in the United States, and we haven't even begun the Green New Deal policies. I think we've shown a lot of research on this channel that shows you that CO2 is not responsible for temperature rise. And the CO2 that we are experiencing, well, a lot of it comes from things like this. Tons of SO2 and CO2 coming out of this thing every day. And about 43 other volcanoes that are also active at this moment. Again, coal, even when man was emitting all the coal in the world, we were still only putting less than 0.4% CO2 in the atmosphere, folks. Not even a percent. Man isn't even putting in a percent of the CO2 that's in the atmosphere as we speak. So these Green New Deal policies, I think it was important to point this out tonight. If Europe is switching back to coal, what's going on? I thought we just had this UN summit, this climate change summit. Aren't we all on the same page? Didn't we meet with Germany and all these other countries? Didn't we say we're going to make commitments and pledges to end climate change and be net, zero carbon by 2035? How are they going to explain in 2035 when, let's say CO2 is about 520 parts per million? Very possible, folks. When you figure up all the volcanoes that will be going off by the time we get to the mid-2030s, we will be right in the teeth of a grand solar minimum, folks. So how are the scientists going to explain when the parts per million of CO2 in the atmosphere is above 500 and we're seeing cooler temperatures that we did in the 2000s, in the early 2010s? How are they going to explain that? Because they've been feeding us for the last 30, because right now they can show you a temperature rise and they also see a CO2 rise. So they're like, oh, that's it. That's all I got to do. I mean, they just compared two things and said, well, that's got to be it, right? If CO2 is going up and temperatures are going up a little bit, that's got to be it, right? That's case closed. Next, we get rid of the CO2. But we're not. We're not. Because we know we can't live without it. Unfortunately, plants can't live without it. Animals can't live without it. And we sure as hell ain't going to stay warm on solar and wind if the sun ain't shining because of all the cloud coverage. If the wind ain't blowing. What kind of energy is that going to? What kind of blackouts are you going to have in February, Wisconsin, when it's negative 20 degrees outside in a cold spill for a week? And your power is blacking out on you because, that solar and wind is not, sorry guys, we didn't get enough today. We got to cut back. Also, we need to turn your thermostats down to 59 degrees overnight, please. 59, no higher than 59, please. Oh, that's coming. Especially if they recklessly approve this $3.5 trillion spending bill in Congress and Senate right now, which I don't think is going to happen. There's a couple of Democrat senators that really are standing against the amount of money that's supposedly in this bill for climate change and all this. You know, Joe Manchin is the circuit breaker for the Republican Party right now. And why is Joe Manchin the circuit breaker of the climate change stuff? Well, I'll tell you why. Joe Manchin represents West Virginia. West Virginia, I believe, produces the second most amount of coal for the United States. So Joe is a coal guy. Joe's campaign has probably been funded by big coal for years. Joe ain't going to turn his back on all those donations. Or maybe Joe has a couple of vacations houses thanks to big coal. Or maybe Joe has a lot of nice cars because of big coal. And maybe Joe has a really big cushy portfolio in the stock market because of all the money that big coal has donated to his cause. And it keeps getting him elected, right? But on top of that, when you have lived in the state that produces the second most coal, you also know the facts about coal. And Joe Manchin knows that CO2 is not a pollutant. Now, we need to continue to enhance our technology on how we burn coal so it's cleaner for the environment. I'm not saying let's breathe dirty air. But to sit here and say that we got to switch to really expensive and ineffective energy solutions when there's really cheap and there's safe ways of doing this to help the environment too. But there are cheaper alternatives. And until we find an improvement for solar and wind, it's just not enough yet, guys. And we got to have some backbone and a crutch for these cold winters that we're about to embark on. But like I said, Joe is from a coal state. He knows the facts about coal. The thing that drives me nuts about people like Joe, and I guess it would be career suicide if he went out and said this, but Joe knows that CO2 doesn't cause climate change, but that would make every single Democrat's head explode if he actually came out and said that climate change was natural. So he can only be a maverick on so many things, but at least he's being a maverick on this $3.5 trillion spending spree of climate change nonsense policies that will only put us on the watchers next year. And then instead of saying Europe's crippling energy crisis, it's going to say the United States is crippling energy crisis. This is some scary times, folks, and I can't stress how it's more important that we become more self-reliant. We start prepping for ourselves, learn how to grow, build yourself a greenhouse, prep your homes better in the winter, put in an extra insulation, seal up the house, make sure the cracks are all nice sealed up and tight. Do extra things that will help you through an emergency. What if you get a blizzard and your power's out for 3 days? What are you going to do about power? Do you have a generator? No? Maybe it's time to look into at least something strong enough to run your refrigerator so you can keep your food right, and hopefully you have alternate heating sources like kerosene heaters or fireplaces. But these are things that if we just include with our daily lives and plan, you don't necessarily have to move to the equator of the world because we're in a grand solar minimum. It's yet unknown just how cold it's going to get. Some people predicted that we could see an ice age. I don't think that's likely. I think we're going to see a Maunder minimum type grand solar minimum. I think we're going to see some historic winters, some that we're never going to forget. We're going to talk about them to our grandkids, and our grandkids will tell their grandkids. But I don't know about full-on glaciation and everything like that. Now, there are several things in play right now. You've got the magnetic reversal. You've got these all these 10,000-year cycles lining up. You have the Milankovitch cycle, which is a 100,000-year cycle. So there are things that show, and then you have 2024 too. Remember the alignment of the gas giants. That's going to be really important, folks. Where Earth is going to be in that alignment, it's going to tug more on the orbit. So think about this for a minute. 2024, we're supposed to be approaching the maximum of this cycle. But Earth's orbit is possibly going to be tugged out just a little bit further away from the sun during 2024 due to this planetary alignment with the gas giants. And in return, it's supposed to affect terrestrial temperatures as well. So lots of events to watch here over the next several years to come. But the main thing we have to remember, folks, is that all this climate stuff, all these earthquakes and volcanoes and hurricane, well, lack of hurricanes, I should say, heavy flooding and heavy snow events, this is all because of the upcoming grand solar minimum, the upcoming solar cycle that allows conditions favorable for what we're already seeing. And we're just getting an appetizer of what's to come, folks. I promise you that. This is just the very beginning of things. Things might seem like they might level off here for the next couple of years. Enjoy it while you can. I don't expect it to get any less crazier. Maybe the frequency of the extreme weather might die down a little bit in 2023 and 2024. But with this, like I said, with all these cycles that are lining up with this cycle, the Milankovitch cycle, 2024, where the alignment of the planetary gas giants and where Earth is, so many things to consider towards Earth's climate in those years. So I'm not going to sit here and waste any more of your time about CO2 being in charge of the climate, because we all know that's a bunch of hooey. Let's check out the GFS extended forecast over the next several days. Not a lot to talk about, guys. This is the beginning of the week. Some rain showers across the central part of the United States. Snow in BC and Alberta, but that snow stays north of the border. And just really a bunch of rain for the central part of the United States into the Wisconsin and Minnesota areas, parts of Illinois, Oklahoma, Texas, and Missouri also seeing rain. But this is a slow mover. By the end of next week, we will finally see this low pressure system over the Ohio Valley, more so over the northern parts, and then it strengthens again in the mid-Atlantic and really kind of dives down below New York City and Long Island and stays away from the northeast. But several days of rain is predicted here by the first part of next week for the mid-Atlantic states. That's Pennsylvania, Maryland, parts of Virginia as well, New Jersey, also included in that watch for as far as heavy rain for several days. A couple of tropical systems trying to get their acts together in the Gulf. It just seems like GFS may have something peeking through here. Check it out. This is not too unusual. The millibar pressure on this is 986. So this would be something like a Cat 1. Nothing crazy, folks. But GFS likes the chance of a mid-October possible hurricane. And it could be one of those two waves coming off of Africa that might actually make it all the way here to the coast. This thing could run up. Right now, the model just has it barreling straight for Mexico, so it could just go straight across. So, you know, too far out to tell. This is October 13th. We got a ways to go. We'll keep our eyes on it. What do temperatures look like for the next several days? Well, guys, honestly, not bad. Not bad at all. It's late September. You got 70s all the way into the northeast, 70s across most of the northwest. I mean, look at this. This is nice weather, folks. 90s across the central part of the United States. You got 80s and 70s in the Ohio Valley, 80s across the southern part of the United States, and 90s in Florida. But then you got the northeast and the Great Lakes, 60s and 70s. Not bad, right? But when we look at these forecasts, the northeast and the northwest stay in fall-like, and then the central part to the Ohio Valley is really seeing an Indian summer, but that starts to die down right around October 4th as we start to see things really cool down. This is October 5th. Those 70s and 80s being replaced by 60s across the central part of the United States. Mid-50s for the northeast in northern Ohio and Detroit there. Watch out, Scott Rose. Our friend Matt Bros also seeing cooler weather by the middle part of October, the week of October 6th and 7th, as that cold front really starts moving and more heat tries to build up in the south, but that colder air, that cooler air is just too much for the lower 48, and we get a really big dip here in the jet stream on Monday, October 11th, already showing us what La Niña is going to bring this winter. If we're seeing dips that far already, watch out this winter, folks. We are already in awareness of a weak polar jet stream. So to me, fall gets its act together here across the United States. Enjoy the Indian summer for the next several days across the central part of the United States and the southern part of, as well, Texas, the Florida area, Georgia. But after the next couple of days, when we get into October, things will start to feel like fall. And really, other than this hurricane that we have approaching in the Gulf, nothing really crazy weather-wise expected here in the United States. But I will leave you with this, and this is our La Niña watch. We check out the 3-4 index in the El Niño region, and as long as it's at 0.5 or below baseline for a consecutive time of 3 months or more, we know for sure that a La Niña is on the way. Well, today we are now seeing values at negative 0.503. We are officially in the beginning of what could be a La Niña winter. Now, just how strong, we don't know. And I'll tell you something. With what we've had going on, solar activity, and what we expect this winter could be a doozy, and then you hear La Niña. Last year when we had La Niña talk, it was all Modaki, 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 La Niña, Modaki, El Niño, Modaki, La Niña. Not hearing anything about weak. So it's concerning to me that I'm hearing about weak polar vortex, which, remember, weak polar vortex is a bad thing because if the polar vortex is weak, it's going to spill out colder air further south in wavy spots. It's going to be inconsistent. Nonetheless, weak polar vortex is bad, especially if you don't like cold weather. And then we see El Niño or La Niña dropping down to where it needs to be a proper La Niña. Plus, I know if you don't follow the old Farmer's Almanac, but still, they're calling for a historic winter. So to me, there's 3 things, 2 that are meteorological and scientifically proven. The almanac's just superstition. But to me, there are 3 signs that say we are going to have a doozy of a winter. Now, watch, because I've been saying it so much, we have the hottest winter on record, so I don't know. But anyway, I don't think that's the case, though. Signs don't point that way. I've called the Northeast, the Great Lakes region, Wisconsin, Minnesota, the Northern Plains states, and the Northwest. I think we'll see some very, very, very cold records broken this year. And then we'll see more cold temperatures dip into the south like we did in Texas. Probably see it this year in Mississippi and Alabama as well as Georgia. So I'm not trying to put that voodoo on you guys down south, but with a weaker polar vortex, and especially if it's really weak like right now it is, then there's a good chance that we could see some deep, deep troughs reaching the far south and seeing some record cold down in the south. All right, guys, that's going to do it for us tonight here on the Grand Solar Minimum channel. Please like, share, and subscribe, and hit that bell on the notifications. I always hear about how we don't get alerts all the time, so make sure you're clicking on that bell and put the all on the notifications. Want to say hello to a few people out there in the chat. Hello to my lovely wife, Mari. Richard Davidson, Matthew Bros, good to see you in here, brother. Muggs, Skywalker, Kansas Terry, longtime listener and longtime follower of this channel. Very enthusiastic Gardner, good to have you here, even though you're a Ravens fan, but that's okay. We all have faults, right? Just kidding, buddy. Jesse Vorwall, good to see you out there. Shirley Davidson also in the chat with us. Knife Collector, thank you for being here again. Michael Abbott, hello there, sir. And many, 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 many others who I see some new faces in here, which excites me as well. I'm glad to have the new faces. We love new listeners. We want to keep growing this community, keep getting the awareness. And folks, it's just something we got to adapt to. It's not the end of the world, but if we're not ready for it, it could be the end of your world. So, all right, that's going to do it for me tonight, folks. Thanks for tuning in, and we will talk soon. Take care.
Do you like this show? Give us a thumbs up. Want to support us more? Share to your favorite social media platform. Buy a t-shirt or become a Patreon. All links are in the description below.